welcome to episode 10 of Pop It Like It's Hot. We are brought to you, as always, by RIW Hobbies and Games in Livonia, Michigan. We got an exciting show for you today. My name is Chris, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts.
This is Nick.
This is Dave.
Hey, this is Mike.
And we're also joined by a very special guest today. We have Billster47 with us. Billy, you want to introduce yourself to our guests?
Hey guys, yeah, it's Billy. I'm Billster47 on MTGO. Been playing Pauper for feels like 10 years now, and had a lot of good results recently. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely, man. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Pauper Challenge this week. You were there in 10th place?
Yeah, I got 10th. I paired up with Helsaw. I don't know how to say his name. Round 1. And he got me. So losing round 1 is always tough to top 8. But I ended 5-2 and got 10th. Yeah, ruined my breakers. Even though we ended up 6-1, I think. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting decks.
Yeah, we saw Mono Black Control for the first time I can remember recently making the top 8, and it did so twice. Actually, 2 in the top 4.
Top 4, right? Yeah, that's pretty cool with the new innovation. I like it. I haven't tried it out or anything, but it seems obvious why it would be good in the deck, right? You could get back another Gary or...
Yeah, just for people that don't know, I guess, on Magic Online, you can already play any of the Throne of Eldraine cards. So they've already been showing up in a bunch of lists. I think most of our listeners probably play online, but just in case you're not aware.
I've been saying for a while that I think black removal is really good, and I swear the Witch's Cottage being legal now, people are going to see that black removal actually is good. They're excited to play black now because no one really wanted to play it. And if you didn't play Jeskai, you were losing. So now people are excited to play black, and yeah, there you go. Black removal is good.
Yeah, I think black, one of the main reasons I ever wanted to play black was Gurmag Angler and maybe Chainer's Edict. But now it makes sense to, I don't know, have a full-on black deck.
Snuff Out is good right now. Snuff Out is very good right now.
It seems that way, yeah.
Sniping something for free is not a bad thing to do.
I'm a little bit confused with why Mono Black is really good right now, because it seemed to me like a lot of the cards that made it good were just getting outvalued by the Jeskai engine, if that makes sense. You know, Jeskai can draw so many cards that it doesn't matter if you get wrench-minded down to 0. Like, you top deck a Muldrifter and you're off to the races, and, Mono...
Yeah, that's very fair. I'd like to look at the list or ask the pilots how they did against Jeskai to see if they had a good day. Maybe they just dodged it and got lucky.
That could be, too. Just the excitement of Witch's Cottage and the new cards making Jeskai just a little less. That could be it. But honestly, I thought this too, and maybe you guys can fill me in if you think this. But Duress is also decent against Jeskai, right? Like, that's one way to get the stuff before they even cast it?
Well, for something like Ephemerate or, I guess, a counterspell, but a lot of their value is coming out of their creatures anyway, which you can't Duress. It doesn't look like either of them was... Oh, actually, the guy that got second was on Distress in his sideboard, so...
Right. Yeah, which is another card that I think is good against Jeskai.
I guess I'm not super afraid of Duress because I'm running 3 Archaeomancers and a bunch of bounce lands, and sometimes I need to get cards out of my hand anyway. It's not even a big deal. And if they're trading 1 for 1, that's my whole game plan anyway.
Leave it to a Jeskai player to say, Duress, thank you.
But yeah, it's like... I don't know. I did find big problems with Castigate. So if they can strip your creatures, that can be a problem sometimes.
Right, and you see that at number 5.
Yeah, speaking of Castigate, Amoris27's shown up again. We kind of mentioned him a few weeks back. Just plugging away with the same list, and he's got results to back it up, man.
Very strong player. I like that he's attacking the format in his own terms.
Do you guys think maybe the results this week are kind of a reaction to Stompy being so prevalent last week? Just a lot of the black removal being up here, only one real, I guess, quicker deck in Elves.
Yeah, I would definitely say I know I updated my list to play against aggro decks adding in more prismatic strands and removal. So I think you're right.
Yeah, Billy, you've come to some big tournaments with some interesting takes on Jeskai. You definitely seem to have your own flavor that you bring to your lists. What sort of brought that around? Like, what got you off kind of the stock standard Lindoso 01 list that everybody else seems to run?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what are the main cards that they're playing differently? I think it's Seeker of the Way probably is one, and more cantrips.
Yeah, some of the cards I've seen you run that I was curious about specifically were like Thraben Inspector, and I saw you run Reign of Revelation in the MCQ, and they're just some interesting choices that I didn't intuitively think to make, but I'm curious
So
kind of what brought you there.
Reign of Revelation was a Kung Fu Tree's kind of idea that he shipped me a deck list, and I really liked it, and I played with it. But since then, I'm off of Reign of Revelation. It's definitely a good card, but I just don't need to fill my deck with 4-mana cards. You can play 1 and 2-mana cards and accomplish the same kind of things, really. But Thraben Inspector is really good. So sometimes when you're playing Jeskai, you'll like have this weird situation where Core Skyfisher just gets stuck in your hand, and it like is a bad card, and that's no good. So Thraben Inspector is kind of like Astrolabe's 5 through 7, because it works really well with Core Skyfisher, and also Mono Green's really popular right now. I like Prismatic Strands, so I need an extra white creature for strands. So it really fits a lot of like niche holes that my deck was missing. The card is very, very good.
Checks a lot of boxes as far as like spots in the meta that you want to cover.
Exactly. The card is very strong.
My experience playing your MCQ list, Raven was an all-star. Like that's a very, very good card.
What card got cut for it?
I think probably Seeker of the Way is the main card I know that I'm not playing. And the card is very good, and it can definitely steal games. But it's kind of a card that's just going to die when it enters the battlefield in any close game of Magic. So I'm looking for more answers, not threats. I need to make sure I can stop everything that's coming at me.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point, that it kind of makes their removal more valuable because it's probably the only card in the deck that doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect.
Right, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Interesting.
Though it does do well against some decks I can struggle with, like Mono Green and things like that. But ultimately, I've decided I don't like it.
You know, I wanted to mention also, going back to why maybe Mono Black was showing up. If you look at some of the sideboards and even a couple of the main deck choices, it seems like a lot of the lists are certainly gearing towards beating the other Jeskai decks. So like the Jeskai lists are trying to beat themselves. So you see multiple red blasts, like 5 or more sometimes in the sideboards, and now there's like Dispel main all over. And those are cards that obviously either are completely ineffective or just very low effectiveness versus a deck like Mono Black Control. So it could just be that it's kind of finding a niche in the metagame at the moment.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I know I tune my Jeskai deck to beat the mirror because that's what I feel like I'm going to see the most of or have the most trouble with. So you're right. I think it's maybe an open lane, and now in my my foresight, I think Jeskai will just adapt a little bit, and it won't be a problem eventually. But we have to be aware of it right now. That Mono Black might be around.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point. That's something I wanted to touch on kind of in a broader conversation. And that's the health of the format. And, that's something we've sort of talked about in a few episodes in a row now, but I think it's on the forefront of everybody's mind. You see Jeskai, and it is dominating, volume-wise. Everybody's playing Jeskai, and if they're not playing Jeskai, they're playing something to beat it. And the argument kind of for people that are saying the format is still healthy is that Jeskai is right around maybe just above a 50% win rate. And I'm curious if that win rate is a product of the deck, just having a lot of close matchups, or is it cannibalizing the format and it's 50% win rate because all of its matchups are mirrors?
It's I think part of it might be because the online Pauper meta is so inbred. It's all the same top players who are very good just playing that deck. It might just be that good players are playing the deck and putting up results with it. I think the deck is beatable. But I don't know where I'm going with this. I think you can. I don't know. People want to maybe ban some cards to just put an end to this. I don't know if I'm quite ready yet. I think you could find a way to beat it, but maybe the only way to beat it is to join it. So yeah, there could be a problem there.
Yeah,
we went down a road with that. I got really fed up with Jeskai and was calling for ephemerate bans myself, and I don't know. I've completely changed course, and I don't want anything banned again until I get to see where Mystic Sanctuary takes the format. I
like
I
that
just don't.
attitude.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of banning the fix at all.
I don't like removing cards. Yeah, it makes. I don't know. I'm sad that they banned Daze and Gitaxian Probe. I
Right.
might be alone on this opinion, but I think those cards did not need to go. They died for Gush's sins.
That's true, and I can't help but think Daze would help at least shore up the Jeskai match for some of the blue decks, like Mono Blue or something like that. Like Mono
Right.
Blue was miserable against Jeskai.
We would probably have a mono blue Delver Fairies deck. Again.
Yeah,
And it, I know they're both the color blue, and maybe that's a problem. I don't know, but it would be two very different decks that would add another. I don't know.
Well, my feeling is people would still be unhappy even if we had a deck that was competing with it because, I don't know, people just don't really know what they want. And,
I think people are unhappy. Yeah, I agree. People just want to complain a lot of times.
and they want to play something else. Whatever that something else is just not being allowed by what's present in the format, and so they're upset.
It seems to be the hot button issue of Pauper. You look on Reddit posts, and those are the ones that get the most interactions, and you get polarized people on each side of it. It's just so kind of funny how I can't think of another format where it's such a galvanizing topic.
Well, it seemed very mismanaged that you ban Gush, Daze, and Get Probe, right? Like those are just gone, and then you print something like Ephemerate. Like, come on, what are you doing? That doesn't make sense.
Let them compete with each other at least, yeah,
Right.
to see what will happen. I agree.
Who doesn't want to see the old UB Delver list versus this new Jeskai thing? I want to see that. That's a great matchup.
Agreed.
Well, I guess then they added all this other stuff, but admittedly, only maybe 4 or 5 cards from the recent editions are getting played, like Goblin Grenade and a little bit of Merchant Scroll. But yeah, like just to sort of agree with your point, I wish they would have given it some more time to develop and see what would happen.
I honestly think the format would have lost a lot of players if we had to deal with much more of the blue-black Delver meta. That was super toxic, and no other deck was worth playing.
What was the timeline for sanctioning versus the banning? Was that the same day? I can't remember. I can't remember exactly when that happened.
No, the banning happened in, I want to say, early June. Actually, no, it was right after the one case. It might have been mid-May, and then the sanctioning was early June. So it was a few weeks apart.
Yeah, so I don't know if I agree with you there, Chris, because if you just sanction it, all of a sudden people want to play Pauper. They didn't have to do the bannings for that. And it would have been nice because then you have Gush for people to play with and Daze in a format of all commons. And then it's sanctioned, awesome. Then they print Ephemerate, awesome. It just wasn't necessary. I'm going to stand by that. I hate Blue Monday.
I think maybe Gush did need to go. The card was really good. A lot of people weren't playing it correctly, but that doesn't mean anything. It just, I don't know. In my opinion, you just needed to play a Gush deck.
I would just really love to play it with Mystic Sanctuary. That would be...
Yeah, good.
Oh my god.
Mystic Sanctuary right now. Did you take a look at Entropy Birdman's deck?
Yeah,
the Familiars list?
So that was actually, so I lost to Hellsaw in the first round, and I lost to Entropy in round 6. That's what kept me out of the top 8. And his deck was very cool.
So this brings us right back to my original point. Ban Tron.
Yeah. That'll solve everything, right?
That'll solve everything. Yeah, get rid of Urza's Tower and the format's back.
So he was on a list, a Tron list with Mystic Sanctuary.
No, he actually was on a familiars list.
Okay.
No Tron lands. But yeah, he was playing. The idea is with Mystic Sanctuary, you don't really need a Mnemonic Wall or Archaeomancer anymore, right? You can just put the card back on top, so you don't have to play these clunky 4 or 5 mana cards. And if you happen to have, I forgot what it's called, Iceberg Cantrix, I think, in play. It's a 0/4 whenever a Snow Permanent comes into play, mill 2. Yep. You can Ghostly Flicker the island, Mystic Sanctuary, and a Astrolabe. Mm-hmm. Stack the triggers, right? So you can put the Ghostly Flicker back on top of your library and draw a card. So you'll get it back. You'll be right back to where you are, and you've milled them too. So that's an easy infinite combo.
Oh, that's super gross. When I was kind of theory crafting Mystic Sanctuary, I got as far as the Muldrifter, Ghostly Flicker, Mystic Sanctuary loop, but I did not consider Astrolabe. That's so gross.
Right, all of your combo cards cost what, 2 or less, and you would need 2 familiars in play. We should mention.
That's kind of the gig with fans. Yeah. You want 2 in play.
So I played against that with my Ephemerate deck, and I got the Ephemerate combo very early, and I had a stream of Screds, and I was killing all his familiars. But the kicker was he had Reaping the Graves, so he could just keep playing 5 of them a turn near the end of the game. It was wild. So could never really quite get through it. So I'm very interested in that deck, and I'm probably going to brew a good amount.
Now, is that deck running Ephemerate as well, or no?
He wasn't running Ephemerate. I think I would run Ephemerate. Why not? Card's insane.
It blanks removal. Like that's what I hear.
It costs
like if
1. Yeah,
right.
It's so
you go to
good.
Scred the FAM, just one mana, and you get rid of the Scred, right?
Well, I think he was only on one of the walls because he was relying more heavily on the Sanctuary. So Ephemerate's not maybe as you can't loop it as easily without.
You can't loop with Ephemerate to win, but you can loop with Ghostly Flicker to win. But Ephemerate's a lot easier to cast, and you're still playing Muldrifter, so you could. I think you want to just rely on that engine to power through your deck, and then win with whatever you find. It won't be hard to find it, I think.
Yeah, the beautiful part of the combo is that you're not really playing anything that you wouldn't already want to play. They just all happen to work together to form an infinite combo. So, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't play Ephemerate. I mean, you're already playing white. It's the best white spell besides maybe Prismatic Strands.
Yeah, and you get to play Prismatic Strands too. Yeah, I'm interested in that deck. I'm going to put some time into it.
Well, so, okay, that kind of, I guess, leads into a point that I wanted to introduce as well. Like, so we see the bans from Blue Monday from WotC, and then Modern Horizons, and we get a ton of powerful stuff there. And now Throne of Eldraine comes out, and we've had all these problems with, like, recurring instants and sorceries and, you know, bouncing multiple permanents, and they print Mystic Sanctuary. So it's like they just continue to want to print these, like, powerful effects that are really redundant and hard to interact with for this format. So what's going on here? Like, what's their end game?
Well, their end game is a Ghostly Flicker loop.
Well, I meant
yeah, it's like
I meant WotC's end game.
I mean, I would think, you know, a lot of people come to Pauper with like the classic archetypes they want to play. Like I've mentioned, they like playing Burn. They love tribal strategies. There's classical decks like Blue-Black Control. There's Tron, so people can play all sorts of decks, whether they're exact builds or similar builds from Magic history. But I think, you know, you have competitive people coming to it like us, and you have more casual people just wanting to play their deck. I don't know. It feels like maybe the Wild West right now, but I think they want to have it be a place where you can play your favorites, you know, and it's still kind of like old school Magic. You don't have Planeswalkers. You have Lightning Bolt, Brainstorm, Counterspell, and just iconic parts from Magic for me.
So I guess the response I would have to that is, how long are those spells going to be viable if they continue to print these, like, super powerful effects in pretty close succession to one another, which would seem to, like, lead people in deck crafting towards the same lines where you're just putting, you know, stacking Ephemerate and Astrolabe and Mystic Sanctuary. Like, as the sets are coming out so close together, it's hard to miss the interactions between them. So is there, like, a directed design from Wizards where they want you to play these cards together, or is it just kind of coincidence that all these powerful things are like hitting each other right at the same time?
This is a good question. I still think that these days cards are designed to make certain archetypes. And back in January, Gavin mentioned that they were going to start paying attention to Pauper. And now look at what's going on. We're sanctioned. We have Blue Monday. They're printing Ephemerate, printing something like Mystic Sanctuary. It's like they're looking at archetypes. Savage Swipe is another great example where they just make these decks better. Like they looked at the format and go, well, this deck needs this deck needs this. And if Magic or if WotC is doing that, it kind of eliminates brewing. It just they're pre-designing the decks for us.
I don't disagree. Maybe them paying more attention to Pauper has kind of backfired almost.
Yeah, we get these cool effects, but then the only thing we could change is like cards on the margins, essentially. Like the core of your deck is kind of what, the most powerful stuff is, which is all the stuff they just printed recently.
I think they design cards ultimately to be fun and limited, right? So they design a card and go, okay, this needs to work in the limited format. But I think you're right, because they said we're going to start paying attention to Pauper, we're going to make more powerful cards. I think they just said, okay, we can print more powerful commons and see what happens.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think you run into this idea of if they're going to continue to do that, what happens is every single set, they have to have powerful cards that make that set relevant for all constructed formats. And you're going to run into issues of cards becoming irrelevant or needing actual bans. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure that Blue Monday needed to happen. But if you continue to have to up the power level of the previous set, you're going to be forced into bannings at that point. You have to. And I don't want to see any constructed format go through that. We've brought it up multiple times before. Look at Hogak and Modern. Like, you can't continue to do that to a format.
I mean, I think it's back to the root of the format being ruined. Well, with power creep and all, they're getting better, but you'd still want Muldrifter to draw you more cards because they're going to kill my guy. And so what if there was a card in Pauper that said, creatures entering the battlefield don't cause any triggered abilities to happen? Like, it would be the nut. So, like, look at some of the best cards. Yeah, like, there's all the best cards are enter the battlefield triggers, and then, okay, like, the spell that makes that happen more and more. Like, how many creatures just are vanilla or don't have a triggered ability, or just, what are they, Annihilator or Hexproof, or they're Grimmag Angler, or that's it. I don't know. Like, everything seems to have a enter the play or enter the battlefield trigger, right? Like, so much of the creatures.
Well, it seems. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say the only cards that stop enter the battlefield triggers are rare, I think, right now. Maybe some uncommons. I'm not sure why they haven't printed one in a common. I feel like they probably could for maybe 4, like an artifact for 4, or a creature for 5 mana, something like that. I don't think that would be a bad idea, even.
It seems like a kind of complex effect. I don't know that they would put that on a common. We are kind of seeing some stuff break the mold of what could be a common, but it does kind of feel like a more complex effect than what would be printed at common.
Look, I mean, you could create something similar to that. That's, like Bilster said, a 5-mana artifact that said creatures no longer have abilities or something like that. You can simplify the effect and just make it cost more, I think.
Well, it's not so much, I think, the effect itself being too complex to understand, but the way that it affects the game state. Then you have to remember every time there would be a trigger, instead that doesn't happen, and that can kind of confuse players, and they certainly don't want to do that to, like, newer players. Maybe they introduce that in something like the next, if they do another Modern Horizons, or if they release it in a Commander set, that maybe they'll do something like that. But at least up to this point, that doesn't seem to be something they want to introduce at standard level.
Yeah, just attach it to a 2/2 and it'll be fine.
They love doing that now.
Yeah, put it on a 2/2, give it prowess, and call it a day.
Bears
with effects, man. That's WotC's design space these days.
Yeah, you can always kill it. Yeah. I think that's why people are playing Remove Soul. I think that's why Exclude's always been great in Pauper, or at least playable, and you see decks that once they play exclude, they're really trying to do the control thing, just stopping any of the triggers by countering the spell itself, and exclude obviously will reward you by drawing a card. But yeah, no, you look at some of the Jeskai decks and you're like, wow, just counter the creature, and they can cantrip all they want, but this is what gives them a body while cantripping. So kind of cutting the head off is the way to attack their card advantage. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so I guess the question I have kind of on this broader topic we're discussing is, Wizards says that they're going to be paying attention to Pauper and, considering that when R&D is designing new sets. But I wonder to what extent that is, because, I think it's inarguable that they are more concerned about a good draft environment than they are helping Eternal all commons formats. So when you have a card like Ephemerate get printed, that's sort of, the proof in the pudding for me, because Ephemerate was great in Modern Horizons draft. It really enabled some archetypes they were trying to push at higher rarities, but it clearly is too good for Pauper, at least in my opinion. So I wonder what you guys think about that. Like, do you think they really are trying to do like what Mike said and make a card for a particular deck, like Savage Swipe, or are they just saying, okay, we'll print stronger commons and kind of making that they're paying attention to Pauper, I guess?
Well, I think, there's definitely like an issue of power creep because, like for Savage Swipe, for instance, we had a very similar card in that other fight spell for a green and 1, and they like reduced the cost, altered some of the like conditions around what that card would do its thing, but ultimately made it more powerful because it's at a lower cost. And you could have just reprinted that same card. The other fight spell that cost 2, but I guess it wouldn't probably break its way into either a constructed format or a limited format unless it had that increased power level. So there's definitely like some power creep going on, but it feels just a little bit more pushed, like kind of in the way that some of like the recent standard sets have looked. Going back to like Kaladesh standard and before, where you had these just ridiculous effects that were like overpowering everything else in the format. That's kind of how this last several sets released has felt from for Pauper from Wizards.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, would the limited environment of Modern Horizons have been that much different if they just reprint Cloud Shift instead of making Ephemerate? And then, I mean, Pauper still gets a great card in Astrolabe, but they don't get, this 1 mana spell that you get to cast again for free.
Yeah, Ephemerate, I wonder if it was an oversight. Like, if they didn't test it enough. Because right when the set came out, I'll admit I wasn't looking at Ephemerate right away as the best card. Obviously, I was looking at Astrolabe going, this is ridiculous. How did they print this? But you're right. Ephemerate's kind of emerging as like a the best option. Like, what else? Why would you do anything else almost? Which is a problem. Which turns into a problem. So, I don't know. Yeah, they could have had Cloud Shift. It would have been the fine for the limited format. I think Modern Horizons was a chance for them to push more great commons to try to help Pauper out in their eyes. But yeah, what they did was they just created a bunch of cards now that we have to play.
Yeah,
they created a monster.
Well, it feels like kind of a very slippery slope, or rather, not so much a slippery slope, but just you're on a knife's edge where you either print a card that, in order to get it played, it's going to end up being more powerful than anything else, or if you just dial it back one notch, it's like unplayable because it's just not surpassing what else it would replace in the format. Because like we didn't play Cloud Shift before Ephemerate, but now we just change one little thing on Ephemerate and make it have rebound, and now it's busted in the format.
Yeah, Muldrifter Undying Evil was a thing, like a really small thing. But you're right, it never broke the format or anything. It was fun, but now it's like refill your entire hand, 6 new cards.
Well, didn't the oversight just happen with Foil? Like, wasn't Foil the oversight that made Gush go crazy, and then they had to ban that because UV Delver took over, based on what they say, and now we have Ephemerate. Like, if no bannings happened, wouldn't we still be fine? Like, that's still my argument for this. It drives me crazy. It makes me so angry with where Pauper is at. Like, maybe I didn't mention this earlier, but I've even kind of stepped back from competitive Pauper because I just don't like where it's at right now.
I think that Blue-Black Delver deck was very popular just because of the popularity increasing for Pauper itself. It sounds like I was saying the same thing over and over. Like, that deck was on a really steep uphill increase just from, I think, people wanting that Legacy Light feel. When you look at the deck, it feels like Death Shadow in Legacy, and I think it was just drawing that many players into the format. It was on such an uphill tick, and then foil came. So it, I think maybe that added another feel bad free card to the deck, but it was already seeing a gross amount of play and success. Just, you're playing all the free spells, you're playing Gurmag Angler, just throw in Death Shadow and Force of Will, and you're very close to a Legacy deck there. So I think that's what kind of was the story of all that. I mean, foil, maybe people blame foil. Maybe they got by it a few times. And I remember playing it. It's well, this is great. I could counter their turn one play if I really, really needed to. But the deck was fine without it. I don't think you'd miss too much by not having foil. The deck would still get nixed.
I want to add, I think foil was a little overrated. It was, how many times could you really cast foil in a game, go down 3 cards to counter something? You definitely...
But it was the threat of being able to cast foil more.
Well, right. The fact that you could do it at very clutch moments to push the last few damage in was very good. But I had eventually cut down to, I think I was only running 2 foils.
Yeah.
Just because other people are running 3 and 4. How many times do you want a foil in a game? You're just going to kill yourself. But it was good, but I don't think it was insane. I think Gush is the real issue.
And so I think this all brings me back to my original point of, Wizards says that they're going to consider Pauper when they design sets, but I think a lot of people took that to mean, hey, we understand Pauper as a format, and we're going to design cards with that format in mind. Whereas, in my opinion, what they've done is they've just said, okay, people like playing Pauper, so we're going to push the power level of commons and see what happens. So we get things that look like oversights, like Ephemerate. What were they thinking? Foil. There was no need to downshift foil. And I feel like that's probably a trend that we're going to start seeing in a lot of sets.
Okay, I'm gonna throw on my tinfoil hat here and and bring out my conspiracy theory on this. So, okay, there's, I guess, maybe a couple arguments you could say. One would be that and this is my little personal conspiracy theory, they didn't want certain cards in the format, but they weren't so dominant that they could use their metrics to say, Gush shows up, and beats all these other things, so we're going to ban it. It hadn't gotten to that point, maybe, so then they print this card that enables a deck to just really abuse the crap out of that card. Now, we have these other enter the battlefield effects, and they want to get rid of maybe Tron or Flicker or something, and so they print this thing that just takes it up to this next level with, maybe Astrolabe or something. So part of me, the small tinfoil hat part of me says they want to get rid of X card, so they print Y card, and then that gives them the justification.
Yeah.
You could also just say
Sanctuary.
You could also just say that Occam's Razor is at play here, and the simplest explanation is they're just not competent as designing or not aware of everything. There's definitely been some blind spots for their design team in the last few years, so it's possibly more likely that they just missed the interaction being as powerful as it was. But sorry, that was my brief tinfoil hat moment.
Your theory has some legs, honestly. I don't think that's what's happening, but the story fits perfectly.
It does. Foil to Gush, and I'm telling you, they want Ghostly Flicker gone, and that's why Mystic Sanctuary exists. I'm telling you, that's it. Nick and I have talked about this before. I'm telling you, that's what's going on. Flicker's gone.
I think when you're spouting conspiracy theories, often the simplest explanation is the most likely. And to me, the most likely situation is that there's maybe 1 or 2 guys that really know what Pauper's all about in R&D, and they don't have enough time to test interactions in the smallest competitive format all that much. So they're just erring on the side of, we'll print it and let everybody else figure it out.
I don't know. They missed, what was it? Sahili, Felidar Guardian in Standard, which was one of their most played formats, and then Hogak in Modern, probably the most played format. So,
Look, they missed a lot of stuff in Kaladesh. I think that was just
maybe
I
they
think
just
they-
lost some R&D guys or something. They don't have
No,
as
they
many.
actually mentioned that they knew about the Felidar Guardian Sahili Rai interaction. They mentioned that.
And they
But they
printed
printed it
anyway.
anyway. Yeah. No, it's crazy, right? And then someone busted the format with the 4 colors Sahili deck, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, no, we totally did that on purpose. We wanted a twin combo in Standard.
And then you go back like 1 year before that, and that was the Eldrazi Winter too. Like missing that interaction as well. I just feel really gross.
Yeah, that was not good. That was the Detroit Grand Prix was wrapped up in that. So you're like, we keep getting all these like team Grand Prix in Detroit, and then we finally get a single player Modern one, and it's the Eldrazi Winter, and you're like, oh my god, did it to us again.
And then they did it to you again with Hogak. That's crazy. I think that's what we want. We want to avoid that for Pauper, where we get a situation where there's a deck like Hogak that's just clearly better than everything else.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're there yet, but it almost feels that way.
What do you guys think about? Okay, so Hogak, Hogak was a mistake for Modern. Is Ephemerate just a miss for Modern more than it's a intentional move to affect Pauper? I mean, you're not seeing Ephemerate in Modern. It was Modern Horizons, and I would imagine that.
Now.
Is it okay? Yeah,
Soul Herder is getting a little bit of traction.
Soul Herder.
You don't have a ton of time in Modern. You have so much time in Pauper. So to land some like 4 and 5 drops is tough in Modern. But you're right. There's a deck trying it and succeeding. Which is
same with Astrolabe.
Yeah.
Astrolabe's all over Modern. That card is actually just good.
I've been
heads
playing
up, guys.
a
Astrolabe's
lot
good.
of Urza in Modern.
Yeah.
Yeah, Astrolabe is insane.
We should backtrack. You top 16 to this challenge, and we had talked about a story leading into that.
So this was the first MCQ online, or I guess the only one, and I was practicing the night before. I had played the same Jeskai list for maybe 2 weeks in a row now, doing really well. I think I top 8'd the challenge beforehand. And that night I was doing well. I think I was 14-1 after 3 leagues, playing great. And then I started another league. This was like 2 a.m. the night before the Mythic Championship qualifier, sorry. And I ran into Kung Fu Trees in the first round. Kung Fu Trees proceeded to mop me. He 2-0'd me with his version of Jeskai. And then he told me he was having he was doing really well against Jeskai. He had gone 12-1, something along those lines. And he was just excited about the deck, so he shipped me the list. He sent me the list, and I liked it a lot. He was playing a lot of the cards that I really liked, Thraben Inspector and Prismatic Strands, cards that I've done well with in Boros in the past. So I thanked him. That was really nice of him. I dropped the league immediately, 0-1 drop. I just started up with that league, and then I 5-0'd that night. Felt really good about the deck. And then the next morning for the MCQ, I 8-0'd, and then I could concede the last round to get in the top 8. And then, so I was technically 13-0 at that point with the deck, which is great, but then I lost to Burn, sadly, in the quarters. Got burned out.
I've been chasing a run like that in Magic for as long as I've been playing this game. I can't imagine. That's got to feel great to feel like you're a step ahead of the meta game.
It does. It's weird. I probably shouldn't complain about the format in any way because I feel like I have a good understanding of it. But yeah, I was immediately on that deck as soon as Astrolabe came out, and then I felt like I always was a good tuner rather than a builder. So when someone who's a good builder, deck builder, gave me their list, I really I got to take advantage of that. That was awesome.
So that kind of brings to mind a question for me. Like, let's say that your position is that Jeskai is the best deck, and you don't think that's going to change too much with like any kind of printing. how do you handle the format? What do you do? Do you like continue to play? Do you take a step back, or like how do you find like value from playing that format when you feel there's something that's just that like powerful in the format?
Uh, well, I guess that's one of the reasons I started playing Pauper in the first place, is because it was easier to win than drafting, and I didn't have enough money to buy into standard and modern. So even if it's not the most fun I've ever had, I'm still gonna play because there's a lot of money in it. I my Moto account is insane right now with how much I've won.
So for you, value here is
It's
literal
just
value.
yeah, just loading up ticks, exactly. I don't see a reason to stop. But yeah, it's not the most fun I've ever had playing Pauper. It feels like it's changed a lot. A lot of Eternal formats don't change all the time. You get a lot of the same decks. People get familiar, and that's a part of the reason I liked it, because I could. Standard's hard to follow. The deck changes every month or something, so I could get familiar with something and not have to learn something new. But now the format's all over the place. Everything's changed. But I have a good. I feel like I know what's going on very well, so I could adapt pretty quickly.
What about for the rest of you guys? Like, do you like? I just like brewing different things that I try to attack that top tier deck with. Maybe even taking that deck and tweaking it. Maybe somewhat along the lines of what Bill was saying about Kung Fu Tree's list. But like, what do you guys? How do you find the value out of this format when you feel like it's kind of stale or kind of stagnated?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mike. No, you're fine.
For me, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is I've actually taken a step back from competitive play because I've been so fed up. I recently did a challenge and I did participate in the MCQ. I was running ATOG shift, which I still like that deck. The deck's fun. But what I keep running into is Jeskai, and I like playing fringe decks. I like playing like on the outskirts. Like Mono Blue Delver, for example, was one of my favorite decks in the format before the bans. And I've been known to play Panza, for example. I like playing like decks that are just you can tune to attack certain metas, but I don't feel that Jeskai is easy to attack without just playing Jeskai. So me, I've just taken a step back. I just haven't been playing a lot of competitive now, and actually have been playing more limited, like the Throne Sealed and things like that.
And there's your conspiracy theory right there. Pauper is exactly where WotC wants it to be, forcing people into draft.
And driving Mike to draft.
We talked about Billy's playing Pauper for the money. WotC is building Pauper for the money. There we go. Format solved.
As annoying as Jeskai is, you do see it lose to like mono green land destruction and like goofy decks. You can beat it. I'm not completely depressed about the format, but yeah, I don't know. I don't. We'll see. Is there a banned and restricted announcement coming up soon? Do you guys know?
A week from today, actually.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So a week from now. Do you foresee anything changing? I'm curious.
I hope not. I would rather see where Mystic Sanctuary goes before they mess anything up.
I think if it was up to me, they should unban Daze and get Taxian Probe. But I don't think. I would like to see no changes as well. Give us some more time to work on the format. It's very fresh. It's still pretty fresh.
And this is coming from someone that's like depressed about the format, by the way. I still don't think anything should be banned. I think just let it ride,
Look, I'm not going to lose any sleep if I wake up to the banned and restricted announcement and find out if Emery got banned. I would like some recognition in the announcement, at least. Last time they gave us nothing, and I think a lot of people were looking for a little bit of insight into if they don't want to change anything, why not? What does the data that they don't show us do to back up your decision? So I would like a little bit of recognition, and wouldn't hate it if Emery got banned.
Well, it could be one of those situations where it's like you don't want to find out how the sausage is made, and it turns out they just throw darts at a board with card names on it, and that's what goes this week. At least that's how it's felt anyway. But
yeah, I'd like to see Days come back. I'd like to see no cards banned. and I'm just I don't know. I have a stable full of decks. I like Jeskai good enough, but if somebody wants to borrow it, I'll give it to them, and I'll play mono red. I brewed up an Elves deck with black in it just to mess around. I'm trying out Esper right now, see if that's got any better matchups against like the green aggro decks. I don't know. I've never been one to sit and complain about it. I don't know. I enjoy Jeskai, but I like the other decks too. I think Jeskai's a moving target, so it's kind of hard to beat it too. So it's not just one list that you can expect. It kind of varies 8 cards this way or that way, so it's different whether they're more aggressive aligned or more control aligned. I think that's kind of contributing to how hard it is to beat that deck too.
Well, you guys all kind of know me that I like really degenerate stuff. So my choice of ban unban would be unban everything. Just let chaos reign for a little while.
That'd be cool.
See what happens.
Give me Sinkhole.
What about
cranial plating it? I don't know.
There you go.
Has that ever been legal? I would like to
No, I think that was an auto ban.
I could beat up cranial plating with Jeskai. That's a little cocky. I don't know.
I know a lot of people at the store want Invigorate unbanned. They can go turn 2 infect you.
Yeah, that would be exciting.
I'd like
That's
to
another
see,
one I wouldn't lose sleep over.
like a no ban list pauper event. I think that would be pretty interesting. Not weekly, but maybe once every 2 months or once every month. I think that would draw some interesting decks out.
I think I know what I would build.
They had one, yeah, not too long ago, and it was a blue combo deck that ended up winning, if I'm not mistaken.
I would build a Cloud Post mono blue combo deck with some Grape Shots and some Cloud of Fairies and flicker everything. Is that what won? Yeah, that sounds decent.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there was a lot of interesting stuff.
However, not gonna lie, playing black with him sounds great too. So you might just want to do that because you can.
I just want to
lands.
I want to turn 1 Delver, Gush into Treasure Cruise, into Foil, into all sorts of blue nonsense. That's what I want.
That sounds nice.
Actually, you know what I really want is them to downshift Psychotog. That will make me happy for the rest of my life.
There, it's on record now. You got it. You did it, Nick.
All right, yeah, I just found the top 8 lists from it was called the Pure Pauper tournament, and I believe Deluxecoff had something to do with starting it, but the top 8 was Drake deck won, a Teamer deck that Deluxecoff, I guess it was mostly mono red, got second, mono blue Delver third, let's see, Cranial Plating got fourth, so that was your top 4. So you're seeing a lot of the real degenerate decks right there at the top.
I'd play Cranial Plating. That sounds pretty cool too.
I don't know. I feel like whenever like bans discussions get brought up, it always comes down to the perspective of the player. And for me, like I've been playing Magic quite a while, and I've played in some pretty degenerate metas. I played when Vintage had 4 Trinispheres, and Workshop was running around with that, and I like that meta. I played when Affinity was legal with Skull Clamp, and I never played Affinity, but I had fun in that meta. So I mean, I'm not saying that I destroyed those decks. I probably didn't have a good win rate against them, but I still found a way to have fun in that meta, and I still enjoyed the game either way. So I think it just comes down to like how you view the game, how you view your enjoyment of it.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about, trying to beat the boogeyman in a format, and there's that inevitability. Like if you don't play to the best of your abilities, that this deck is just going to beat you based on power level. But man, it gets tough after a while. Jeskai, the inevitability with that deck it gets to me because it can play the aggro game, but once you spend all your resources killing their core Skyfishers, it's drawing 6 cards with Muldrifter and starting all over again.
It will generally have a better plan to refill its hand than you do. Yeah. So all it has to do is live, which isn't too hard.
Yeah, exactly. Because it can block everything with a 2-mana 2/3 that draws a card.
Yeah. Is Skyfisher the problem? Who knows?
Well, it's kind of everything all at once. It's got, probably the most efficient creature in Skyfisher. It's got the most efficient removal in Scred. It's got the best card draw engine. It's got the best late game. It can bring everything back from the graveyard. Like, there's not a lot that it can't do. And that's just, I don't know, it gets depressing to just play against something like that over and over again.
I will say that I think the Jeskai versus Tron matchup is not favored. It's maybe a little bit of an underdog, but not too much. The issue with Tron is no one knows how to play it efficiently online. There's only like 3 pilots that can actually play Tron at the right speed. Otherwise, I think we'd be seeing a lot of Tron because they can prey on the Jeskai decks.
I've had a lot of success with Tron online. I had a couple of recent 5-0s with it, although my list was overlapping, so I didn't get posted. But I think Tron is well positioned to fight against Jeskai. It's tricky. It took a lot of timeouts in leagues before I got to the point where I was able to play through it fast enough.
You got to play at speed, the fastest speed, right from the beginning. Whenever I see like another guy I know who's on Tron, it's I shrug. I go, "Oh God, this is gonna suck," and then you're in for a 50-minute grind, and hope you can get there. But Tron I think is a good deck right now too, but still got the same kind of issue with Ephemerate Muldrifter. I think the problem we're talking about applies to both decks. I think it could potentially, if there was no Ephemerate, solve some of those issues.
Yep.
You're starting to convince me that there might need to be an Ephemerate ban.
No, you'll get past that.
We got another one, boys. Here we go.
I don't know. I'm generally on the side of give the format time and see if it works itself out. But I don't know. I'm just a player.
And I'm really
We're coming up kind of on our normal time here. Go ahead, Mike.
The Mystic Sanctuary Ghostly Flicker thing, I swear that we got to reconvene in a month and just see.
This week I'll be playing a lot of that. I'm hopefully I can post a deck. I don't know. We'll see. But
I'm messing around with fans, and I can't wait to see what like 420 and Method Man and these guys that have really been playing it for a long time do with that deck. It's gonna be crazy.
Method Man had 2 trophies in like the first 5 minutes of this league, so he's
that.
Clearly busted it in half.
I think I saw that he had 3 before anyone else had 1. Am I mistaken?
No, somebody else got the first one. I know he had 2 before anybody else, and he was obviously off to the races pretty early.
Odo was like not loading correctly.
Who knows?
I'm impressed. He already has 3.
Yeah.
That busted, man. That card is very, very, very good.
So before we go, though, I mean, we are coming up on close to an hour here, but Billy, I would be remiss if I did not ask you, what advice would you give to people who maybe aren't seeing the, weekly challenge top 8s that you're seeing? What advice would you give them in terms of how to attack the format right now? Is the answer just play Jeskai, or what's your thoughts?
Yikes. It's not that easy. I mean, you can definitely have success with other decks. I would definitely recommend Jeskai. I think you'd have the easiest time getting to the top 8. Just like anything, you really just have to get a lot of matches under your belt, learn why you're making mistakes, and then understand that mistake and not make it again. I still make plenty of mistakes, but if you reduce it to maybe 1 or 2 a tournament, you're gonna maybe top 8. Whereas it used to be, I don't know, 5 a game a long time ago. So I would focus on practice, I guess. If you really want to top 8, you got to play a lot of matches and know your deck inside and out.
Absolutely.
And then and also know the format, know what you're going against. And every week I change maybe 2-3 cards in my deck just to attack whatever I think is going to be. If there was mono green, I put in some Thraben Inspectors and some more Prismatic Strands. I had cut them previous because I saw no aggro, and I was trying to beat Tron, so I just loaded up with 6 Pyroblasts. So yeah, my advice would be play a lot.
That's fair. pick the best deck and play it a bunch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did anybody have any parting thoughts that they wanted to get off their chest before we end this episode?
Unban everything, downshift Psychotog.
I like
At least
that.
give me days. At least give me days back, please.
I guess I want to say thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, no problem. And potentially, if you ever want to have me back on in the future, I would be willing to.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, and I spoke to Methodical, who was our guest last week, along with General Scud. After the Banned and Restricted announcement, we might be knocking on your door because I have a feeling it's going to be interesting, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. So keep us in mind.
Yeah, even no bans is interesting, honestly.
Yeah, we're going to do a big post-Banned and Restricted spectacular, so that's a little sneak preview for the listeners, and we hope to have you back for that.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Awesome. Well, that said, we appreciate everybody listening, and we will see you again next week.
Pop it like it's hot. Pop it